Why is it that, despite all the medical advancements, cancer continues to rise at alarming rates? Why do we hear so much about treatment, yet so little about prevention? And why is it that some of the most powerful truths about health aren't discussed openly? The answer is not that the science doesn't exist. It's that most people don't know where to look, or perhaps someone doesn't want us to look there. Fasting is one of the oldest practices in human history. Every culture, every religion, every tradition has some form of it. Yet in today's world, it's almost dismissed, even feared. But what if fasting isn't just about spiritual discipline or weight loss? What if fasting is directly connected to one of the greatest health crises of our time? Cancer. I'm not here to give you theories. I'm here to share with you a truth that has been hidden in plain sight. A truth backed by science, supported by history, and lived out by countless people who dared to ask, why? Because the moment we stop asking why and simply accept what we're told, we surrender our power. And when it comes to something as devastating as cancer, the cost of ignorance is simply too high. So let's begin not with what fasting is or how it works, but with why understanding this link between fasting and cancer may be the single most important piece of knowledge you'll ever hear. When we begin any conversation about health, it's natural to start with what we know: medications, treatments, surgeries, and the advancements of modern science. But sometimes the most important questions don't start with what or how, they begin with why. Why is it that something as natural, as universal, and as historically significant as fasting is almost completely ignored when it comes to cancer? Why do we rarely hear about its potential in mainstream conversations, while treatments that cost millions dominate the spotlight? The answer may not be because fasting doesn't work, but because fasting doesn't fit neatly into the business of medicine. For thousands of years, fasting has been central to human life. It has been a spiritual practice, a cultural discipline, and a natural rhythm dictated by food scarcity. Our ancestors lived in cycles of feast and famine, and their bodies adapted to survive and thrive. Today, with food available around the clock, we've lost this rhythm. And with it, perhaps, we've lost one of the most powerful tools nature designed to protect us. The question becomes, why would something so simple, so accessible, and so cost-free be left out of the conversation about one of the deadliest diseases of our time? When we ask why fasting is dismissed, we uncover a truth many don't want to talk about. It doesn't generate profit. There is no pharmaceutical company that benefits when you skip a meal. There is no billion-dollar industry that thrives when you give your body a chance to heal itself through rest. Fasting can't be patented. It can't be owned. And because of that, it often remains in the shadows, even when science points to its potential benefits. This isn't about conspiracy theories. It's about asking the deeper why. Why the simplest solutions are often the least promoted. Cancer is a complex and frightening disease. It thrives in conditions that the modern lifestyle creates: constant eating, high sugar intake, chronic inflammation. Fasting, on the other hand, flips that environment. It lowers insulin levels, reduces inflammation, and triggers processes like autophagy, where the body cleans out damaged cells and regenerates healthier ones. If cancer feeds on excess, fasting starves it of the environment it needs to flourish. Yet, despite evidence, the mainstream narrative remains focused on treatment instead of prevention. The question of why becomes even louder. Asking why doesn't mean rejecting modern medicine. It doesn't mean abandoning treatments that save lives. It means looking at the full picture and acknowledging that healing doesn't always come from something external. Sometimes it comes from what we stop doing rather than what we start taking. Why do we place so much trust in the complex while overlooking the profound simplicity of what our bodies are capable of when we allow them to do what they were designed to do? The power of asking why is that it shifts our perspective. Instead of being passive recipients of information, we become active seekers of truth. Instead of waiting for solutions to be handed down, we begin to look inward at the tools we already have. And fasting is one of those tools. Asking why it is excluded from the conversation about cancer forces us to confront uncomfortable realities that health is not just about treatments, but about choices, lifestyles, and the systems that profit from sickness more than wellness. When you ask why, you begin to see that fasting isn't just about skipping food. It's about reclaiming autonomy. It's about questioning the structures that decide what information we receive and what remains hidden. It's about realizing that sometimes the answers aren't complicated. They're simply inconvenient for the world of business. And that truth is precisely why fasting and its link to cancer is something we cannot afford to ignore. When people hear the word science, they often imagine something locked away in labs, buried in journals, or reserved for experts with white coats and advanced degrees. Yet the reality is, science is supposed to serve all of us. It's meant to reveal truths about the world we live in and how our bodies work. And when we look closely, we find that the science behind fasting is not absent. It's just not widely talked about. The evidence exists, but it remains hidden in plain sight, overshadowed by louder, more profitable narratives. Researchers have studied what happens when the body goes without food for extended periods. What they've found is nothing short of remarkable. During fasting, our bodies shift from using glucose, the sugar found in our constant stream of meals, to using fat as the primary source of energy. This shift triggers profound biological processes that don't just support health. They challenge the very foundation of how cancer thrives. Studies show that fasting can lower insulin and growth factors, both of which cancer cells often exploit to grow uncontrollably. Without that constant fuel, cancer struggles to find the environment it needs to spread. But that's only part of the story. One of the most fascinating discoveries about fasting is its impact on a process called autophagy. This is the body's built-in recycling system where old, damaged, or abnormal cells are broken down and removed, making room for healthier, stronger cells. Think of it as spring cleaning at the cellular level. Cancer, in many ways, is the opposite of this. Cells that are damaged, mutated, and out of control, continuing to grow when they should have been eliminated. By triggering autophagy, fasting gives the body a chance to clear away the very types of cells that, left unchecked, could turn into cancer. Despite this evidence, these findings rarely make their way into mainstream conversations about cancer. Instead, most of what we hear revolves around expensive treatments, advanced technologies, and new drugs, all of which have their place, but all of which also come with enormous financial stakes. Here lies the uncomfortable truth: fasting doesn't generate revenue. It doesn't require laboratories, hospitals, or pharmaceutical companies to profit. It simply requires discipline, knowledge, and the willingness to embrace something natural. That's why the science, though credible and compelling, often gets left in the shadows. It's important to remember that science isn't just about proving what works. It's also about questioning why we don't hear more about it. If fasting has shown potential to support cancer treatment, to make chemotherapy more effective, and to help protect healthy cells during harsh therapies, then why isn't it headline news? Why isn't it being taught in every medical school or discussed at every oncology conference? The data exists, but the incentives to share it do not align with the business of medicine. That doesn't mean the science is invalid. It means the science is inconvenient. When we uncover the hidden science of fasting, we begin to see health in a new way. We stop looking for magic bullets and start realizing the body itself has powerful mechanisms of defense. Cancer is not just about rogue cells, it's about the environment those cells live in. Change the environment, and you change the outcome. Fasting alters that environment, stripping cancer of the fuel it thrives on and strengthening the body's natural defenses. It is not a miracle cure, but it is a powerful ally that deserves recognition. The hidden science of fasting is a reminder that sometimes the answers to our greatest challenges don't come from new inventions, but from rediscovering ancient practices. What has been dismissed as outdated or irrelevant may, in fact, be the very key to confronting modern diseases. The evidence is there. The question is whether we are willing to look beyond the noise, beyond the industries that profit from keeping us dependent, and open our eyes to what the science has been quietly telling us all along. When we look at the way modern medicine addresses cancer, there is a pattern that's hard to ignore. The overwhelming focus is on treatment: chemotherapy, radiation, targeted drugs, immunotherapy. Each year, billions are poured into developing new ways to fight cancer once it already exists. Yet far less attention is given to prevention, to stopping cancer before it ever takes root. The mismatch between prevention and treatment is striking, and it raises an important question. Why are we so focused on fixing the problem after it appears rather than addressing the conditions that allow it to grow in the first place? This imbalance is not just an accident. It's the result of a system that prioritizes solutions that can be monetized over those that are simple, natural, and often free. Prevention rarely generates profit. You can't sell someone a pill for not getting sick. You can't build billion-dollar industries around people choosing healthier lifestyles, eating less sugar, or practicing fasting. But you can build industries around treating diseases, around drugs, around therapies, around lifelong medical dependency. This doesn't mean treatments aren't important. They save lives every day. But it does mean we have to acknowledge that the system itself is tilted away from prevention and toward treatment, because that's where the money flows. When we consider fasting in this context, the mismatch becomes even clearer. Here is a practice that costs nothing, requires no prescription, and has evidence showing its ability to strengthen the body's defenses and make it less hospitable to cancer. Yet it's hardly ever mentioned in mainstream medical discussions, unless it's framed as a risky or fringe practice. Prevention doesn't fit the dominant model of medicine, and fasting is perhaps the clearest example of this mismatch. Instead of being celebrated as a proactive measure, it's brushed aside, overshadowed by the lucrative world of treatments. The human cost of this imbalance is enormous. Millions of people live in fear of cancer, waiting for the day they might have to endure harsh treatments. Imagine if more people were empowered with knowledge about prevention, about how lifestyle choices like fasting could play a role in reducing risk. Imagine how many lives could be spared not just from the disease, but from the suffering that comes with fighting it. Yet prevention is not the story we are told. We're told to wait, to hope science develops a new treatment, and to put our faith in the idea that once we get sick, someone else will fix us. This passive approach robs us of the power we already have to take charge of our health. There is also a cultural element to this mismatch. We live in a society that glorifies quick fixes. We want pills to erase pain, instant solutions for complex problems, and immediate relief from discomfort. Prevention, by contrast, requires patience, discipline, and long-term commitment. Fasting is not glamorous. It requires self-control and the willingness to sit with hunger. It's not something you can package in a shiny bottle or market as a revolutionary breakthrough. Yet its power lies in its simplicity, in the fact that the body already knows what to do if we simply give it the chance. By focusing almost exclusively on treatment, we've created a medical culture that sees prevention as secondary, almost optional. But the truth is, prevention should be the foundation of health. Fasting, as part of a preventive lifestyle, deserves to stand alongside other measures like exercise, nutrition, and stress management. The fact that it doesn't is a reflection of priorities, not a reflection of its value. The mismatch is not between fasting and science. It's between prevention and the system we rely on for healthcare. Understanding this imbalance allows us to see the bigger picture. We don't have to wait until sickness arrives to take action. We don't have to rely solely on external treatments when we already possess internal tools to protect ourselves. The mismatch between prevention and treatment is not inevitable. It's a choice we've made as a society. And if we choose differently, if we place equal emphasis on preventing cancer as we do on treating it, then fasting will no longer be a forgotten practice, but a recognized pillar of true health. If we pause for a moment and really look at the human body, we begin to see that it was never designed to eat the way most of us do today. 3 large meals, endless snacks, late night cravings, all fueled by a constant stream of processed food and sugar. This pattern is not natural. It is manufactured by modern convenience and culture. Throughout most of human history, people lived in cycles of feast and famine. Food was not always available, and survival required the body to adapt to periods of scarcity. What's fascinating is that the body didn't just survive these periods, it thrived in them. Nature built us with mechanisms that activate during fasting, mechanisms that protect, repair, and strengthen us. These mechanisms are not accidental. They are evidence of design, of an intelligence in our biology that we've almost forgotten. When you remove food for a period of time, something remarkable happens. Instead of shutting down, the body shifts gears. It taps into stored energy, lowers insulin, reduces inflammation, and initiates cellular repair processes. The system resets itself in a way that makes it stronger. This is nature's design, a rhythm of nourishment and rest, of feeding and fasting. Just as our muscles grow stronger with cycles of stress and recovery, our cells grow healthier through cycles of eating and abstaining. But in today's world, we've broken this rhythm. We live in constant feast, and the consequences are visible in the epidemics of obesity, diabetes, and cancer. Cancer, in particular, is a disease that flourishes in abundance. It feeds on glucose, it thrives in inflammation, it takes advantage of the constant availability of fuel. By returning to the natural cycle of fasting, we create an environment where cancer struggles to grow. Fasting deprives it of the very conditions it needs while giving healthy cells the opportunity to regenerate. This isn't a modern discovery. It's simply a rediscovery of what nature has already provided. The body knows how to protect itself when we align with its design instead of working against it. There is a deeper lesson here about trust. We've been taught to trust external interventions more than our own biology. We trust pills, procedures, and products, yet often doubt that something as simple as fasting could carry such profound power. But nature's design has always been there, waiting for us to remember. Every animal in the wild instinctively fasts when it is sick. It doesn't require research or explanation. It's an inborn response to allow the body to heal. Humans are no different. Our design includes the wisdom of fasting. We've simply overridden it with the constant noise of modern life. When we realign with this natural rhythm, we not only support our health, we reconnect with something much larger. We begin to see that health is not about adding more, but often about allowing less. Less food, less sugar, less noise, less interference. In that space, the body does what it was created to do: heal, repair, and defend itself. Cancer may be one of the greatest challenges of our time, but the tools to confront it are not always outside us. Sometimes they are within, embedded in the very fabric of our design. Fasting reminds us of that truth. It strips away the illusion that health must always come from something external, something complex, or something expensive. Instead, it shows us that nature equipped us with everything we need if we are willing to trust the process. The cycles of fasting and feeding are not punishments, they are gifts. They are the blueprint written into our biology, and they hold the key to resilience. When we honor that design, we not only fight disease, we reclaim the balance that modern life has taken from us. Choice is one of the most powerful tools we have, yet it is often the one we underestimate the most. In the world of health, people are conditioned to believe that they have very little choice. They are told that genetics determine their future, that disease is random, and that their role is simply to wait until something goes wrong so that the experts can step in and fix it. But the truth is very different. Every day we make choices that either support health or weaken it. The foods we eat, the habits we practice, the stress we carry, the sleep we sacrifice. These choices build the environment inside our bodies. And when it comes to something as devastating as cancer, the power of choice becomes even more significant. Fasting is one of those choices. It is not imposed by a system, it is not dependent on a prescription, and it does not require permission. It is a choice available to anyone, at any time, regardless of wealth, status, or background. By choosing to fast, even for short periods, you are choosing to give your body space to repair, to reset, and to strengthen itself. This decision doesn't just impact your physical health, it impacts your sense of agency. It reminds you that you are not powerless in the face of disease. You can play an active role in shaping your own well-being. For many, the idea of fasting feels intimidating. The fear of hunger, the discomfort of stepping outside familiar patterns, it's easy to believe that such a choice is too difficult. But when you recognize what is at stake, that discomfort becomes meaningful. Choosing fasting is not about deprivation, it is about empowerment. It is about trading short-term comfort for long-term resilience. It is about recognizing that you can't always control what happens in life, but you can control how you prepare your body to face it. The power of choice also lies in what fasting represents beyond health. It is a conscious rejection of the dependency the modern system tries to instill. A dependency on constant food, on marketed products, on expensive treatments that come only after illness has arrived. By choosing fasting, you step outside that cycle. You prove to yourself that your health does not always need to be outsourced. You begin to trust the intelligence of your own body instead of believing that it must always be fixed from the outside. That shift in mindset is transformative. This choice also creates a ripple effect. When one person decides to embrace fasting and experiences its benefits, it inspires others to ask questions, to challenge assumptions, and to explore alternatives. In this way, the act of choosing fasting becomes larger than one person. It becomes part of a movement toward reclaiming health from systems that have reduced it to a business model. It reminds people that health is not just about fighting illness, but about building strength, resilience, and freedom. What makes the power of choice so compelling is that it is always available. You do not need special access, extraordinary resources, or external validation. You simply need the willingness to decide. And while fasting may not guarantee that you will never face cancer or disease, it does guarantee that you are actively supporting your body in the best way you can. It guarantees that you are not waiting passively for illness to strike, but taking steps each day to strengthen your foundation. The link between fasting and cancer may be under-discussed, even hidden, but the choice to explore it is yours. And that choice can redefine how you see your health, your future, and your role in protecting yourself. Because when you realize that the power of choice is in your hands, you stop waiting for someone else to save you and start becoming your own greatest advocate. Perspective changes everything. Two people can look at the same situation and see entirely different realities. When it comes to cancer, the dominant perspective we are given is one of fear. We are told it is a death sentence, an uncontrollable monster that strikes without warning, something to dread and avoid thinking about until it forces its way into our lives. That perspective leaves people feeling powerless, waiting for external solutions, and hoping science will save them. But there is another perspective, one rooted not in fear, but in empowerment. When we shift the way we see cancer and fasting, we begin to recognize that we are not helpless. We have tools, we have knowledge, and we have the ability to take meaningful action. Changing perspective begins with changing the narrative. Instead of viewing cancer as an unstoppable force, we can see it as a disease that thrives in specific conditions. Conditions often created by the way we live. This means that by changing the environment inside our bodies, we can influence the odds. Fasting is one way to do this. It doesn't promise invincibility, but it shifts the balance of power back toward us. It changes the story from, cancer is something that just happens to me, to cancer is something I can reduce my risk of by changing how I live. That simple shift in perspective transforms fear into responsibility and despair into hope. There is also a shift that happens when we stop asking, what can I do if I get cancer? And start asking, what can I do now to make my body less hospitable to cancer? That proactive mindset is powerful. It doesn't deny that cancer exists, but it reframes the way we prepare for it. Instead of waiting to react, we choose to act in advance. Fasting becomes not a desperate response, but a deliberate strategy for resilience. It allows us to feel a sense of agency in a conversation that often strips people of control. Perspective also matters in how we interpret fasting itself. If we see fasting as deprivation, it feels punishing, like something to endure. But if we view fasting as renewal, as giving our bodies time to reset and repair, it becomes a gift rather than a burden. This reframe changes the experience. Hunger is no longer a sign of weakness. It becomes a sign that the body is engaging processes of healing and strengthening. The same act, seen from a different lens, becomes something empowering instead of something to fear. When enough people adopt this new perspective, the collective narrative begins to shift. Society stops glorifying constant consumption and starts respecting the value of restraint. Health stops being defined only by medical interventions and begins to include personal responsibility, lifestyle, and ancient wisdom rediscovered. This cultural change can take time, but it always begins with individuals daring to see things differently. By choosing to view fasting not as an outdated ritual, but as a powerful, science-supported practice, we begin to rewrite the story of health itself. A new perspective also brings clarity about what truly matters. If we see cancer only as an enemy to fight, we will always live in fear of the battle. But if we see it as a teacher, as a reminder that the way we live matters deeply, we gain an opportunity. Fasting, in this light, is not just about avoiding disease. It is about aligning with a way of living that honors the body's design. It becomes less about fighting against something and more about working with the wisdom already within us. Shifting perspective doesn't change the reality that cancer is serious and devastating, but it does change how we approach it, how we prepare for it, and how we live in the face of it. Fasting offers a lens that transforms the conversation from fear to empowerment, from helplessness to agency, from silence to awareness. And when we adopt that new perspective, we not only change the way we see cancer, we change the way we see ourselves.